Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to Bava Metzia, Daf Ayin Zayin. We're going to begin on the top of Ayin Zayin, Amud Alf, the third line from the top. V'omer Rava. And Rava further says, the Haiman, the Oger Ugre Ladavla. So a person was engaged in a work, and it was Ladavla, as Rashi says, Lahashkai Sadais. He was supposed to water a field. Mitra, and all of a sudden the rain started coming down. Now he was supposed to water the field, and Hashem did it for him. Says Rashi, V'hishka osa v'inostrich l'davlo. He doesn't need to do it anymore. So pseda de poalim. That's considered to be a loss for the worker because he was hired to do something, and it was done without him. Asa nahara. Let's say a river overflows. Pseda de balhabayas. That's considered to be a loss for the balhabayas. Says Rashi. Let's say the water comes and it basically destroys all of the work that was done, and therefore, not even that the work was done, but because this came about, you didn't need any water or irrigation of the field, so the din is that the Baal Bayis loses. The po'alam enu yoidim b'minhag sadehu shehinar oila. So only the Baal Bayis could have possibly known this could have happened, but this is not something in which the poil would have known, and therefore yovel hu poil batal. You do have to pay him. So again, if it's rain that comes down, so you can anticipate by looking in the clouds, as we saw yesterday, or you can investigate and look at a moist field, a wet field that you couldn't work at tomorrow, and therefore you lose out. The poil loses out. However, if there's a river overflow, that's something in which may happen periodically, but there's no way a worker who's just hired would know that. But you, the owner of the field, would know that. And therefore, because of that, you should have anticipated, and therefore you're going to end up having to pay him anyway. Again, you hire someone to water your field. And the river stops halfway through. Ilu Ovid. So if it usually doesn't happen, the pasik pseda de poalim. That's a loss for the worker. So again, if it's something in which this is an uncommon thing, so the Baal Bayis would not have anticipated that this was going to happen, and therefore because of that, the workers will be the ones who lose out of the pasuk. But if there's something that does commonly happen, therefore the Baal Bayis should probably know. So it depends. Even a masa pseda de poalim. If those are the people that live in the city, which therefore apparently that would mean they also should know these things happen, even though it's not their field, and maybe they never worked with this guy before, but they know that this is what goes on in the city, so they're lost. La b'nei masa pseda Baal Bayis. However, in the event where they don't live in that city, so they would have no idea, but the Baal Bayis would know, so therefore it's his loss. Question 2. Haiman de oiger aguri ladavla. Madin, what is the din in the following cases? L'basayf asamitra. If rain came, so it's stated the poalim, as we said. L'sayf asanahara. If, let's say, a river came, so it's stated the Baal Bayis, and you have to pay the guys as a poil bottle. L'basayf asa nahari then. Pasik nahar b'pal yayma. Let's say it came in the middle of the day. So as we said, if it's not normal that this happens, it's the poalim's loss. If it does happen, it depends if there are people who live in the city. If they're in the city, it's still their loss. But if not, then it's going to be the Baal Bayis' loss. Say the Baal Bayis. Haiman de agar gure la avidita. So you have, again, this person who hires these workers, ushlim avinita bepalgadiyama, and you hire them for a full day, but they finish their job halfway through. Whatever the task was, it didn't take them the whole day. So if you have easier work for them to do, then you can give them that easier job, the easier task for the second half. Inami. Alternatively, the kamsa mafkadluhu. Alternatively, you could give it as like a mafkid, like a pikadain. The kashmine lo mafkilahu, but nice lahem sachar mishalim. So that's only if it's something which is easier. However, if it's something which is harder, then you cannot give it to them, and therefore, because of that, you have to pay them in full. So it's only if you have an easier job for them that they could do it for the second half. But if it's something which is harder, then not. Okay, so, or the kavase, again, or could, even if it's, let's say, an equal level, but if it's more difficult, then no. Amai, why? You should only have to pay him like a poil bottle. So Kikama Rava, when did Rava say this din? They had to pay him fully. It's ba'ach lushe de mechuza. Who are these people? Says Rashi. But mechuza shu iro shel Rava. This was Rava's city. Hayu b'nei adam haragil mases masos tamid. In that city of Rava, there are people that are constantly carrying things, doing work. And when they sit, betelim kashalahem. It's actually worse when they don't work. Because if they don't work, they get weak. So by you having them work, that's better than them not working. Because if you don't have them doing work, they're going to end up being physically weaker, and therefore it's better they should be able to work. So we said you should evaluate what they did. So it's almost should have two dots there. So we mentioned in yesterday's daf that if, let's say, you have a situation where they only do half the work, and it was supposed to be they're going to work for finish a task, this kablan, and they're going to get paid 2 sela. But they only did half of the job. So if they did half the job, then everything is the same. You pay them half of their wages. But let's say, according to the Tanakama, let's say it goes to 6 dinar, which means that now you have to hire now you have to hire new workers to do the second half of the task, which they quit in the middle. So do you have to actually still pay them half, which is going to mean you're going to end up losing money, the Baal bias, or do we say that you only have to pay them less? So he says that Nois Lehem Sela, you still have to pay them for half of the job, even though now the second half you're going to be paying more than a Sela, or you could just ask them to finish their job and they'll get paid 2 Sela. Now the reason for this, as Rashi says over here, is because the truth is they're acting like avadim, they're acting like slaves, servants, and we know that we're supposed to only be serving Hashem. We're supposed to be avadim to Hashem and not servants to other servants, as the Gemara in Kiddushin also states regarding the din of a nirtza. So even if the market price increases and now it will cause the Baal bias a loss to hire workers to finish the job, it doesn't matter, because workers have the upper hand according to him. That's what we just saw. Because according to Rabbanan, yad poyal el yoyna. Oh, yigmur malach v'yitushne saloyim, or let them finish the job and they'll get paid what the arrangement was of shita. Why not? But tzricha, we need it in a situation di akir avidita, where the price for labor went up. V'imru po'alim, they'll say v'imru po'alim v'ozol bal habayis ufasinhu mahu detema matzuram elhei. Maybe you would think they could say ki mipaisina nadaita de taflan agra. We are going to do it only on condition that you pay us more money. Kamash malan yamelhu adaita de tarachnulhu bachil ashtia. Not that you're not. That doesn't mean you're going to get paid more. Only we'll give you some more food. Anyway, the point is that was the arrangement. However, we're going to see it's sella no Islam sella. Again, if it was for a sella, that's how much, and it didn't change. That's how much you should give. What if labor was cheaper? Mikara from and then from originally from what it was before. Va'ag rinhu b'tfei zuzi. So he added more. Made it for dinner. Ubasaif at the end iyakar vidita, and then all of a sudden the labor became more expensive. Vikam b'tfei zuzah. So manatema, since the cost of labor changed, amrle tfei zuzah amrit lan tfei zuzah havlon. Now the value went up. You should continue to give us a zuz more than the going rate. Kamash mon di'amrelu, you can say ki amrelu tfei zuzah doi havi kimluchu hashti kimluchu. I was only willing to go up to a sela and not anymore. Okay, Rav Daisa Omer Shoman Hen Esmash Asid Lehasois Hayafa Shisha Dinar Nas Lehem Shekel Savar Yad Poyel Al Tachtaina. Rav Dosa holds the opposite, because really these people should not have quit in the middle. So why would we reward them and cause the Baal Bais to suffer? So therefore, instead, he says that the Poyel is Al Tachtaina. According to Rav Daisa, he holds that the workers shouldn't have quit their job in the middle, so they have the bottom hand. And this is a case of a kablan, as he's paid for his work, not for his time. So that is the distinction between the Tanakam and Rav Dosa, that if they only did half the job, and now all of a sudden the Baal Bais to have someone finish do the second half of the job will cost him more money than what would have been done, how much he would have paid these original guys completely. So the question is, does the Baal Bais lose out, or does that difference get deducted from these workers? So can Rav Dosa, because Poyel al Tachtaina, because you quit, so you're not going to get the half. The Chamim say no, that it's actually the Baal Bais' Yad al Tachtaina, and therefore because they are allowed to walk out. Oh, Yigmur Malach Nevitul Shnei Salayim. Again, they could finish and get paid what they originally was. So Pshita Lotzricha de Zol Vidita. So it's similar to what we said before, that we're talking about labor was cheap. V'imur Baal Bais V'ozu Po'alim Ufisuhu. The plowman are going to come and to try to appease him. Maybe the homeowner, the Baal Bais, can say, Adaita debatsri suli. My intention was you should lower for me your wages. Under 2 slayim. Debatsun hali ma'agroi. Kamashmon di armalei Adaita di avidata nalach avidata shapirta. We only did this in order to give you better work, but still according to the original price. Okay. That they lowered their rates. That since it went down by a zuz, so it should go down by a zuz as well. When we go down below our rates, but now we're very clear, and we don't want it to go any lower than that. Okay. So the halacha, in fact, is like the shita Rav Daisa, that a poyel is ala tachtaina. A worker can always quit. So here now we have to take a step back. There potentially is a difference between schiras and kablanos. So a kablanos, as we said, you're getting paid for the job. Schiras is for an extended period of time. It's more of a svara to say of vodaihem, because you're not getting paid for your job, but you're getting paid like for time. And avodim, it's like you're paying an eved loses his time. Look at Rashi. The gabi schiras isel high time the avdim v'lo avodim. It makes more sense by schiras that you would maybe say we're more lenient to them, and say that we're supposed to be avodim to Hashem and not to another person. You're really working for yourself. It's like an independent contractor. You're doing a task, and you're being paid for completing a task. So you're really working for yourself. It's not that you're working for someone for a certain amount of hours and they have you do X, Y, and Z. Here, this is what your job is, and you complete the task, and that's it. You send a bill. So in that situation, maybe Rav Dosa says by kablanus, by kablanus they say that poil is al tachtoin. However, when it comes to schirus, maybe not, because by schirus maybe we should be more lenient when it comes to these workers, and therefore maybe we'll say it's the bal bias al tachtoin. So we say 1 second. Does it make a distinction? Let's say you hire a worker. In the middle of his work day, he finds out that someone died. Let's say he got sick because the sun, he got overheated, dehydrated. So ischir sacher, who, if he's someone that, let's call it, just works for a certain time limit, as we continue to Ayin Zayim and Beis, that if he's a sacher who, then noisel sacharo, then you should just pay him his wages. Im kablan who, but if let's say he works to complete a job, then noisel kablan nusai, then you should pay precisely whatever his job was. Why are we so lenient? So it says Rashi, hoyol v'anus who. It's like eno kanasai v'lasas yado al tachtaina v'nas l'chatzi demei sacharo. We're not going to penalize this guy and make him lose out because it was beyond his control. So mani ilim rabbanan ma'iri. Why does the rabbanan say this case of shama shemes l'mei so shachso chama de'anis? That's only because it was something beyond his control. Kilo onis nami, if it was not an oinus, then also kilo onis nami. The Rabbanan hold that even if it's something which is not beyond his control, he can always quit. And yad is always al yaina. So how amar Rabbanan yad pal al yaina. So he can always quit in the middle. El olav Rav Daisahi. Rather, the statement of Rav Daisa, Shema minol lo shanu Rav Daisa. That normally you can't quit, even for schirus. It's just in the case of an oinus that we're not going to kanas. Well, the truth is, this could be talking, even according to the Rabbanan, a case of a davar avod. Maybe by schirus he could quit, and yad al yoina, even Rav Daisa would say this, but here it's a davar aved, so he can't quit. So even the Rabban hold he would not be able to quit, because if he quits, it's going to cause a major loss for the Baal bias. Look at Rashi. Maybe Rav Daisa does make a distinction between a sacher and a kablan. And when it comes to a sacher, we want to say maybe he does have the upper hand. Okay. So why does it mention? So maybe this is really like the Rabbanan. Even the Rabbanan would hold us. So the question is, why when it comes to a case of an oinus, we're saying it's a case of an oinus, that's like the Rabbanan. So even if it's not an oinus, it's yad al the ball. It's always yad hal yoina for the poil. It's not true. It says Rashi, the will onis will hader in the event of a davar aved. The Rabbanan will be agreeing that yad of the hand of the poil will be below. It's going to be al tachtoina, because it's a davar aved. It's a major loss for the Baal bias. He can't get anyone to do it, and he's going to lose stuff. If it's a case of an oinus, so then we're going to be makel. But if it's not a case of an oinus, even the Rabban will hold it's a problem. In that situation, even the Rabban will hold you cannot back down. Question 3. Where do we find the Rav Daisa agrees to Rabbanan diad poil al ha'oyoina? So we said b'schir yoim she'enu kablan moed Rav Daisa Rabbanan diad poil al yoina. Okay, which we didn't really establish that yet, but okay, let's just hold on to that. And ube'eza oifin moidu rabban rabdaisa diad poyal tachtaina. So that is it by davar ovid. Okay. Let's continue. Tanan. The Mishnah says, Kol mishani yad ola tachtaina. Anyone who deviates from the contractual agreement, there's a breach of contract, if you will, so then you have the lower hand. And also anyone who retracts also has the bottom hand. Now, what does that mean you change? The Stamon Tanik Rabbi Huda. It's like Rabbi Huda. Who's Rabbi Huda? What? So Rashi quotes the very famous Gemara, which would be hard to know exactly who this is, but Rashi quotes Puktayu per Goizel Eitzim, as we saw in Bava Kama a few months ago, with Zboyabo Edaim with Sava Shachar, and we'll see this later on also, next daf, that if you have someone to do a task of dyeing wool for you, and you specify it should be red, and it turns out to be black, so since you're a Mishana, since you change that which you were supposed to do, then Yado al Tachtoina, you have the lower hand, and therefore you will lose out. We'll just keep it simple. What is that? What's that coming to include? Lav, is it not? It's coming to tell us that even when it comes to a case of a poil, like Rav Doisa, as we said, we pass the Rav Doisa, that in that situation, Yada al, the poil's Yada's on the bottom. Now Rav Doisa tarti kaimer. My lav, lesui poil Rav Doisa. Ella Rav Doisa tarti kaimer. He's saying two things. V'rav savol kavasi b'chada, paga b'chada. Okay, what does that mean? So it's possible that, again, it's like Rav Doisa, but it doesn't necessarily mean he agrees with him in both circumstances by schiros and kablonos. Look at the sanya. Again, anyone who is chayzer, like we said before, like Rabbi Yehuda, kol chayzer bo. Look at the sanya. Kol chayzer bo ketzad harisham achar sanach haverei. A person sold a field to his friend, bel of zuz, and the field cost $1,000. V'nasal mois mehen mosayim zuz, and he only gave him 200, so he didn't pay him in full for the field. So now the seller only didn't get his full $1,000. He only got $200 of the moicher's chayzer yad lekech al tachtoina. So in that situation, the buyer's yad lekech al yoina, rather, the buyer has the upper hand because the moicher is the one who changed his mind. Therefore, Ratz Oimer, if the buyer, he can say low to him, Tainli Mosai, give me back my $200. Oh, Tainli Karka Keneged Moisai, or give me land, this 1,000 zuz of land, give me 200 of it, but Mehechin Magbehu Min Idios. I want it to be of the highest level of quality field. So since the Moicher backed down in the middle, he only got some money, okay? So therefore, the Lekech has the upper hand. It was Manchel Lekech Yad Moicher Al Yaina. However, if the Lekech, the buyer, retracts, then the Moicher has the upper hand. He can just give him back his $200. Or he can give him back land. So now the Moicher can give inferior quality land. Okay. However, no, Malabdin Aisan, we teach them Shul Yaksur, not to back down. Ketzad, how do we encourage or make sure they don't back down? So we have to stipulate in the contract the following. Kaisaba, you should write the following. Ani ploini ben ploini, macharti sada ploinis la ploini. Belvsos, I'm selling my field for $1,000 to you. V'nasali mehem osayim zuz. And so far he's given me 200. V'harini naishaba chesmeyos zuz. So now I owe you another $800. Kana, so the buyer gets the field, umaksol asashar, and he has to pay back the rest of the field after a long time. So therefore, it's no longer like a mechira, it's like a loan. So therefore, he owns the field, and therefore, once he now owns the field outright, he just didn't pay the rest. But it's based on this document, it says that, no, you now own the field completely, and now you just have to pay me back as a loan. Oh, fine. Omer Mar, Mehechin Magbehu Min Idios. So we say that if the seller backs down out of the 200. So then the buyer can say, give me back my 200, or give me the best quality field of 200 zuz. So it is then the chasav. So we think it's referring to the best of his property. So shouldn't he be like a Baal Chayiv? Like he gave him $200. It's like, now you owe me back 200. To non-Baal Chayiv dina bebenis. He should only be able to collect benis fields, not idiots. But furthermore, ha'ara di'oiv zuzi. The land was 1,000 zuz. He should be only able to give him from that field, because that's what he gave the money for. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yitzchak, mi'edish shabah. It means the best from that land. Miziburish shabah. That's what it means. Because again, the monies were given specifically earmarked for that particular field. So therefore, when it comes to the idiots of Ziboris, respectively, of whoever backed down, the other person can collect from the best or worst of that field, not other fields. Even the top of this guy's property. What do you mean? If he's now is like a Baal Chayiv, he should only get Benis property. So stam mandazavan ara ba'alfa zuzi. When a person who sells his land for 1,000 zuz, ozule moizel umazavin nechse, v'halei knizik utanan hanizakin shamlehen be'idias. Very interesting. So, what happened? Why is he selling his field? Why does he do it? Because he needs the money, right? He needed to sell his metaltalin to get the 1,000 zuz. This guy, right? This guy who wants to buy the field. And he sold it at a loss to get all this money. So now when the meicher backs out, he's actually a mazik. So it's actually the way around. That how did he get 200 zuz? Obviously he doesn't have tons of money, because he would have paid for the whole field entirely. So he only had 200. Why did he only have 200? Probably because he sold all of his other metaltalin. He needed a field. So if he needed the field, he went desperately selling a lot of his movable objects. And therefore, because of that, he took a loss. He was hurt. It was a calculated hurt, hoping to get the field. But now that this guy backs down, so therefore now it's like a mazik, and therefore he gets idios. A very interesting twist. Harish says, question number 4. Harish shemacher sadim lechavero be'elv zuz, v'nosel lehen mosayim. He gave him only 200, so he can collect the idios. He can get the buyer, because the meicher backed down, he can get the best. Madua min idios or yoyse karka shikaino medis lefanav. So either you can say it's idios of that field, or again, because since he had to sell all his stuff, so obviously he took a loss, and therefore he says, "Let's mois in order to get the money." Nizik b'chazeres. So the buyer is now a damaged party by the seller retracting, and therefore we know that a nizik gets paid from the best, from idios. So you have to write this down. So once it's written down, they can't back out. Time to kasavle. It's only because they wrote it. Which is mashma that if he didn't write this out, then the loikech would not be kainit. He gave 200 already. He gave something. Vosanya hanaisin a ravoin lechavero. A person gives a security deposit to his friend. If I retract, ervoini mochel be moichel my entire security. And he says, imani chayzer bi. If I retract, echbelcha ervoincha. I'm going to double you. I'm going to give you back the security deposit, but I'll even give you double the amount. Niskaimu hatanoyim de Rav Yosi. Rav Yosi says that actually works, even though it seems like a huge exaggeration, and maybe a person really wasn't serious in his words. Rav Yosi l'taimadir masmachta kanya. He holds on the smachta, which again is words in which perhaps seems a little bit outrageous to lose your erava, your entire security deposit, or to have to double it. But he holds a smachta kanya. It's enough. You should at least acquire keneged whatever the amount is, whatever the security is. That's only when he uses that language. And here's our case: that he sold it for 1,000, but Chamish me'azuz. You already paid him 500. Kana. You already now own the entire field, even if you didn't give all the money yet. Umaxul as a shar, a field achar kamashanim. And you just have to pay the difference many years later, even later on. So even without a contract, he still can't back out, and it's still considered to be a proper loan, if you will. Lokash had ka'ayil v'nafik azuza hadu ka'ayil v'nafik azuza. So, is the seller chasing after the lokeach? If you see the seller is chasing after the buyer, here the buyer doesn't get the field with partial payment. He needed to pay in full, otherwise he's not kaina. The fact that he's chasing after him, says Rashi, Kivan deloyev lizuzi b'shas dachakai adaita dahachi lo zavenle. I only wanted the full payment up front, and that's why I'm chasing after you. And therefore, if that is what we see, then the lokech will not be kainet. However, if we see that he wasn't so particular, then you're right. He can pay some. He now owns the entire field, even if this was not written, and therefore he just has to pay back the rest at a later date. You sold something to your friend, and you're going back and forth. You're trying to chase him down for money. So until that money was paid, it's not a kinyan, because this guy is clear that he needs the money now. However, if you see that he wasn't so particular, then it's a good kinyan, you pay me back later. Remember, so you have someone that owes $100 to his friend, upari zuzah, and he pays him back, instead of $100, he pays him back $1 each time, not the whole amount at one time. So pirayin havi, it is a payment. El the isle toroimus gabe. You could complain that you're not just giving me all the money in one shot. Diamalei afsadtinu minoi, because you can say you're causing me an element of a loss. The fact the way you keep doing this. So a person who sold, I always get confused if it's a donkey or wine. It's usually wine to his friend. Upashle chad zuzah, and he still owed him one zuz, $1. But I have enough in zuzah, and he kept going back and forth, which means, as we said, when you're I have enough in zuzah, you needed to pay back in full. This guy paid $99. He just didn't pay the smallest amount. So the question is, was it a kinyan or not? Yosef Rav Ashi become an ayin bo. He was trying to figure it out. He high gavd in this situation. Could he back down? Kani lo kani. So Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi Hachi Amar Avimi Mahagraini Amishmeid Rav. They said that zuzah kazuzah dami v'loy kani. That a zuz is like a zuz, you're not kaina, which basically means, again, he could still back out. But I heard elsewhere that it is a kinyan, therefore he can't back out. So Amalei to targim shematich, you should explain your sugya. What are we talking about? But Moicher Sadehu, as we continue, Ayin Chesed Aleph, Bimnei Ra'asa. He only sold his field because of there was something bad. Says Rashi, Danan Sahadi. It's clear proof to us, the Belav Unsa, the Zuzah Nami Havi Mizavinlaw, that behind the Ayel Vanafik Zuzah, the reason why he's trying to get his money Mimaher quickly is only Shalo Yaksu Lekeach. He doesn't want the Lekeach to back out. In other words, in this case, we see he keeps going back and forth, but that doesn't mean that it's not a kinyan. It really is a kinyan. The only reason why he keeps doing that is because he's afraid that the loikech may back out because it's an inferior quality field. Question 5. So he said, if let's say if he keeps coming back to the buyer even for $1, the buyer did not acquire the field or the item, the seller can always retract. Obviously, he has to pay back the money that he got already. Okay, so that's the din. That he has to pay in full because you see that he's constantly going back to him. Okay, let's possibly see a couple more questions. TA3. Haiman da agar gure lavidita. So you pay someone to work, v'shlim avidita, and they end up finishing their job halfway through. Madinam. So as we said, If they have an easier job, you can give them for the second half, do that. Otherwise, pay them like a poyo bottle. However, in a city where you want them to work hard, because otherwise they end up slacking off or getting weaker, so then you have to pay them in full. Question TB4. Same question. Let's see how I wrote it. You can have him force them to do an easier job. More than the first one. They need to keep working to remain strong. Not to be lazy. Ad kan.